Well, Nebraska District 1 also looks like it will stay red as Republican Mike Flood clinches the seat to replace Jeff Fortenberry, who was convicted for lying to the FBI. He beat out Democrat Patty Pansing-Brooks.
And District 3 appears to be pulling solid red with a landslide for Republican Adrian Smith, 78% of the vote. Democrat David Else getting just 16% of the vote. Well, midterms often see a balance of power shift away from the party that controls the White House.
And Nebraska is staying solid red in its federal representation. To give context and depth to this year's midterms, we bring in our friend, UNO political science professor Greg Petrow. Thank you so much for joining us. We know analysts have predicted a Republican sweep all around the country. Didn't happen nationwide, but man, here in Nebraska, when you look at the gubernatorial and congressional races, it did. What is the message voters are saying, or sending rather?
Yeah, so the reason, Republicans did so well in Nebraska is that, we live in a very polarized political time. And so people vote very loyally for their parties. And this is a strong Republican state where we have more Republican voters than of any party. And so Republicans are just typically going to do really well here. The big trend to take away is that, historically the president's party loses seats in the Senate and the House in midterm elections. Typically 26, they lose 20 on average. And when you have an unpopular president, such as President Biden is now, you lose any more. So you would have expected, and plus inflation is really high. People are so you could have expected a really massive red wave, as you said, and that didn't happen. The control of the House of Representatives has not been called yet, which is extremely surprising. Control of the Senate hasn't been called yet. And so you have to start wondering kind of what were the countervailing forces that kind of helped the Democrats kind of hold on and counter the red wave. And you have to think that overturning Roe v. Wade was part of it, that's really mobilized pro-choice people who sort of probably weren't really necessarily before voting based on abortion, and now they are. So that's probably at least part of what was going on.
And talk a little bit about those big races. What were you really watching? Any surprises out there?
I was surprised that things were, I guess, as close as they were, because given the historical trends, you would have expected kind of more of a red wave situation. But here in Nebraska, especially Congressional District 2, which we all had our eye on, this race in this district really does kind of reflect the United States. That we live in a 50-50 country where we really do have these two parties that are basically equally matched, and every election cycle there's a tenacious, deeply fought battle for control over the presidency and the Congress, and we kind of have the same microcosm situation right here, where basically this is a swing district. The two parties are basically evenly matched. Congressman Bacon has just really kind of barely held on each election cycle. His best election margin was 4%. Previously, which was, I guess, what happened again last night. So even though the president holds the White House and he's an out party, even though inflation is at 8%, despite all of these conditions that should have really helped Congressman Bacon, it's really tight.
It's so tight in that district too, and there was some redistricting in that in Congressional District 2. He talked about how it did impact his campaigning. Do you think that impacted the vote at all?
That may have helped him a little bit, may have added a fraction of percent or percent. So the Omaha World Herald did this really interesting analysis where they analyzed the precinct level results. And some of those precincts were moved out of his district and other new precincts were moved in. And they found that if the current configuration had been in place in some previous elections, the outcomes would have been very similar. For example, President Biden still would have won that single blue dot electoral vote.
That's interesting.
So it did make margins a little closer, but all of those, like Obama in 2008, he won the blue dot. That still also would have happened. So it was a pretty marginal kind of change.
Yeah, and Jim Pillen, the next Nebraska governor, wins pretty easily. No debates. How rare is that? Was it surprising at all to see him pull away kind of the way he did?
I was very surprised, and honestly, I hate to see it. I think that voters are really served when the two candidates get together and face each other and have just a cordial exchange of ideas. Not only did Governor-elect Pillen not debate, he didn't even meet with the editorial board of the Omaha World Herald. So that's pretty exceptional. Yeah, so I'm hoping going forward for the good of voters and public discourse that he'll change his mind. Maybe he'll be more, maybe he'll feel more secure if, he ends up running for re-election in 4 years, and then he'll have some debates and engage with the media more.
He's got a little time.
He's got some time. Yeah, he's got some time to figure it out.
Thank you so much as always. We'll do it again in a few years.
Great, perfect.
All right.
Thank you.